Oh, sorry for not being better prepared. Yeah, so for this video, I thought I'd do. Well, my last video, I haven't made videos in a while, but you probably saw my last video explaining why I've been battling cancer. Uh, this whole year. It started the end of last year when they found where I collapsed at work, and the doctors found out I had a brain tumor. So I got operated on. Then I had to have radiation, then chemotherapy, and so. But now I'm back home and I'm actually back at work. So you could probably see my familiar uh, backdrop with my books and my figurines and stuff. Uh, so what I thought I'd do, so I thought I'd try, now that I'm feeling a lot better, going back to making videos of the topic I love, mythology. And a lot of the myths and legends that I've told in my previous videos, they tend to be more myths and legends, not so much folklore, folk tales, like the Brothers Grimm stuff. I'm not a big fan of that stuff anyway. Um, but lately I picked up some new books that focus more on folklore, and one of them is this cute book. And I thought I'd give at least one story from all of these books. So basically, it's a book haul. Uh, One of them is Hilda, Queen of the Elves, and Other Icelandic Legends, and this one is retold by J.M. Bedell. And but don't worry, I'll have all these books listed below. And also at Barnes and Noble, and you can find these books online too. I downloaded one from to my Kindle, so I don't have it physically to show you. And these are beautiful hardcover books. They're basically new collections of stories that were published previously many years ago. So the and they've been put together in these new bound copies, usually by subject or region. For example, this one is mostly monster stories, monstrous tales. And instead of having translators or retold by or authors, they have the illustrators because the illustrations like this one is Monstrous Tales, illustrations by Sija Hong. But and then you got this one, which is Nordic Tales, illustrations by Ulla Thynell. Uh, yeah, so these are really great. So I'm gonna tell a story from each of these. There's also another one I can't show you physically because I have it on my Kindle. It's Tales of Japan, uh, and let me tell that story first. Uh, One of my favorite stories from that book is there was this samurai that was, I guess he was a judge or a magistrate and in charge of punishing criminals. And there was one criminal that was brought out to be beheaded by the samurai. And the criminal says, you really shouldn't kill me for the crime I committed because I'm known for my stupidity. And, I shouldn't be blamed for it. I was born this way. I don't know what crime he committed. So if you behead me today, my ghost will seek vengeance against you and everybody that's been responsible for my death. So the king said, I mean, not the king, the samurai said, can you prove your rage? And he goes, yeah, I can prove it. He goes, okay, I'll tell you what. Uh, this was by like a traditional Japanese garden, and there were stepping stones. He points to one of the stepping stones. He goes, when your head goes flying off your shoulders, you think you could bite that stepping stone over there? And the criminal said, yeah, I can do that. So the samurai with his katana cuts off his head. The head goes flying, and sure enough, it's seen biting the stepping stone. And some time went by, and everybody that was involved with this criminal's uh, capital punishment were still afraid. And one of the guys went to the samurai and said, "Aren't you afraid that this guy this ghost is still gonna wreak vengeance on us?" And the samurai said, "No, not really. Did you notice what happened when he died? He was biting the stepping stone." He goes, "Usually when ghosts have such determination. You could divert their attention by making them focus on one thing, and they focus on that one thing and they forget everything else. Ghosts are kind of like that. They remember just the last task you give them. So I just thought that was such a clever story. It just tickles me. The story from Nordic Tales is let's see. Oh yeah, it's this story here. Oh yeah, great illustration. There's a guy sitting on a throne, and it's called Mighty Mikko: The Story of a Poor Woodsman and a Grateful Fox. So you could see it. This must be after he was made king, and he's looking at a little fox. And this is a wonderful little story, animal story. Folktales have a lot of animals in them. And what happens is that there was a family of woods people. It was a father, mother, and their son. And the mother got sick, and as she lay dying, the son was very upset and said, "Mom, what am I going to do without you?" She goes, "Well, you still have your father." But not long after the mother died, the father took ill and was dying also. And the son was like, "You're all leaving me." And the father says, "Who's going to remember me when I'm dying?" And the father said to him, "I'm going to leave you with some advice." The father says to him, "I own 3 snares out in the woods. And what I want you to do is I want you to look after these snares, and I want you to visit them after I die. And if you come across an animal that was caught in any of them, I want you to rescue it from the snare and take good care of it." And sure enough, after the father dies, the son goes off in the woods. He comes across the first snare. There's no animal caught in it. Second snare, no animal. The third day, he goes to the last snare, and he finds caught in it a little red fox. And he lets the fox go, but he picks him up and he brings him back to the house, and he takes good care of him. And over a long period of time, they become friends. The fox becomes his pet and his buddy. And then the fox says to him, "You should get married." And the woodsman is like, "I'm so poor. Who's going to marry me?" He goes. The fox said, "Oh, I've heard the princess of this land is very beautiful." And the woodsman said, "Well, yeah, she is. She's one of the most beautiful women in the world, I hear." So the fox said, "You should marry her." And the woodsman is like, "Are you nuts? She's not gonna. Princesses don't marry poor woodsmen." So the fox said, "Oh, leave it up to me." So the fox goes trotting off to the king, the father of the princess, and goes off to the king, and this was a day where everybody is paying tribute to the king, and the king says to the fox, "What do you bring me? Who are you?" And the fox said, "Oh, I represent Mikko." And the king's like, "Who's Mikko?" Oh, and the fox is like, "Oh, it's Mikko the Mighty." And the king is getting nervous because the fox is so confident of his master, and he thinks, "Mikko the Mighty, this is someone that maybe I should know." So he says to the fox, "Oh yeah, Mikko the Mighty. Of course I know that guy." So the fox says to him, he comes and he actually asks a favor of you. He wants to borrow your bushel measurer. Don't exactly know what that is. I guess it's something that measures bushels of wheat or something, or crops. And so the king said, "Okay, sure, you could borrow my bushel measurer." So the fox goes off. Now, being a fox, he kept a crafty eye on people who lived near the woods, and he knew where they buried treasure. So he dug up this treasure, and he mixed it in with the bushel measurer, and he gives it back to the king. And the king takes a peek inside. Apparently, this bushel measurer is in some sort of sack. And in addition to the bushel measurer, he comes across some gold and silver jewelry, and he's thinking, "Oh, this Mikko must be really rich." And then the fox says to the king, "I want your master Mikko to come and have dinner with me tomorrow." And the fox is like, Oh, we don't have time. Tomorrow we're setting out to visit to visit various kingdoms because my master is looking for a princess to marry, and the king is getting nervous now. He's like, I can't let this rich guy, this rich lord, go off and marry somebody else. So so the king says, "Oh no, I insist on him coming." And the fox says, "My master is a very modest man. He believes in that if he's going to visit a king, he's either going to wear really great attire, or he's going to come as a poor woodsman." And so the king said, "Well, let him come as a poor woodsman, and when he gets here, I'll give him my best clothes to wear." And so the fox goes back to Mikko and brings him along to meet the king. And meanwhile, the beautiful princess is looking out her window and she spots Mikko with the fox. And she says, "Wow, he's so handsome. Even if he was just a poor woodsman, I'd marry him right away." So Mikko shows up and he's wearing, and they dress him in the king's clothing. And he looks so handsome, and he's so modest and everything. And so the king's counselors, they're like, "Oh, look at how modest he's obviously so rich, and yet he's so humble at the same time. He's so respectful." And he meets the princess, and he falls in love with her right away, and she with him. So the two of them decide to get married, and. And meanwhile, Mikko's in trouble now because what's he going to do? Bring the princess back to his poor shed in the forest? So of course the fox is saying, "Oh, don't worry, I got that settled." Now the fox knew that there was this magnificent castle that was owned by this loathsome dragon that people called the Worm. Now the Worm used to be young and strong, and when he was young and strong, he used to do battle and with other dragons and people, and he would conquer different castles in different lands, and he acquired a mass of riches as well as people that would work for him, his servants. So he had shepherds, groomsmen, woodsmen. So the fox kept coming across these different types of people. He came across a group of shepherds, then the groomsmen, and various courtiers. And to each group, the fox would say, "Hello, how are you?" He goes, "Who do you work for?" And they would all give him the same answer. "Oh, we work for the Worm." And the fox says, "Oh, I feel so bad for you guys. It turns out the king in the local neighborhood is on his way over here right now, and he's going to slay the Worm as well as all of you." And all these people are terrified all of a sudden. So the fox says, "I can get you out of this. When the king asks you, 'Who are you people and who do you work for?' just tell him, 'We work for Mikko the Mighty.'" And they all said, "Okay." So when the king came across all of these shepherds and groomsmen and woodsmen and courtiers and asked them who they were, "Oh, we're employed by Mikko the Mighty." And then the king would leave them alone. And then the fox met with the dragon himself and said, "Hello, dragon." And the dragon was like, "Hello, fox. What can I do for you?" And the fox said, "Oh, you're in trouble. The king in the local neighborhood is actually coming over here to kill you." And the dragon, is scared because he doesn't know how to fight anymore. He's gotten fat and lazy, lying around his treasures, and and so he goes, "Oh, fox, can you save me?" So the fox told him, "I think you could squeeze in the sheds." So he takes him out to the shed, and the crafty fox, he sets the shed on fire, burning the shed and the dragon inside to ashes. And so when Mikko the Mighty and the king and the princess reach the castle, they see that, wow, this guy is richer than me, because the dragon had a beautiful big castle, and a lot of amazing plates and very rich rich ornaments, and it was so beautifully decorated, and the food was all served on gold and crystal and very expensive dishes and stuff like that. So anyway, so Mikko manages to inherit this amazing castle, thanks to his friend the fox. And then, after they settle in, the fox says to him, he says, "Well, you have no more use of me. I've given you a beautiful wife and a great castle, so I'm going to be off on my way." So he says goodbye to his little friend the fox, and that's the end of that. I need to find a little red fox and set him free from some snare somewhere. Anyway, my last story is from Monstrous Tales, and I'll make it brief because I want to show you my stuff, and I don't want this video to get too long. From Monstrous Tales, what this story, let me show you the illustration. What happens is that there was this warrior who was very brave, and one day he's sitting at home and he's got nothing to do. And he goes, "I'm a warrior. I should be seeking adventure." So he decides to strap on his swords, and he goes for a walk, and he comes across this very beautiful bridge. It's a very famous bridge, but he can't cross it because there's a giant dragon sleeping on it, and he's totally blocking the bridge, and the warrior can't find a way to go around him. So what he does is that he just steps over the dragon, and he walks all along his body, all the way down the tail, and then he hears somebody calling him, "Hey, you, stop!" So he turns around, and and he's expecting to be face to face with a dragon who's going to gobble him up for walking over his body. And instead, he comes across this weird little man, and the man says, I was that dragon you just walked over, but I'm not offended what you did. I did that on purpose because I've been looking for somebody brave enough to help me." He says, "My family and me are being terrorized night after night by this giant centipede that comes down from the mountain you see over there. Every night he comes down and steals one of my children, and apparently the dragon's got a lot of kids because this has been going on for a while. For many nights I've been lying on this bridge until somebody would walk over me, so I know he's brave enough to kill this centipede for me." And dragons are in Japan and China. They're very much associated with water. And it turns out this dragon was king of the lake that the bridge was built over. So when the warrior said, "Oh yeah, I'll help you kill this centipede," but before the centipede comes, it wasn't nighttime yet. The dragon invites him to a feast, and the warrior says, "Yeah, sure." So he goes down. He meets the family. And they sit down to this amazing feast, and the bowls and the dishes, they're all made out of crystal, and the chopsticks are made out of ebony, and they must be really smooth. When I use chopsticks, I need wood chopsticks because they have more friction. You can't. That's the only way I could eat with chopsticks. But then they hear this stomping. And the dragon freezes and gets freaked out and says, "That's the centipede coming." And the warrior says, "Oh, don't worry, I'll take care of it." So he gets out of the water and he pulls out his bow and arrows, and he realizes he only brought 3 arrows. So what happens is that the centipede is coming down the mountain. He's still a good distance away, but he could see 2 huge glowing eyes. So he aims for the middle of the 2 eyes, and he takes an arrow. And he shoots it, and he hits it directly in the head, but the arrow bounces off. So he tries with the second arrow. Same thing happens. Apparently, the centipede is impermeable to arrows. The shell is too tough. So then he remembers that wise people have said that centipedes are very prone to human saliva. So he takes out his last arrow. And he puts the tip in his mouth, and he tries one more time. He pulls the bow with the arrow, and he shoots, and sure enough, the arrow pierces the centipede's head and kills it. And then the next morning, the hero leads the dragon out and shows the centipede dead in the water. And this is while he's fighting the centipede, this amazing illustration. Here's the centipede's eyes coming down. You can see his body coming down from the mountain, and here's the hero with his bow and arrows. Just this amazing illustration. I really love it. And the story is called My Lord Bag of Rice, because what happens is that the king, the Dragon King's men give him several gifts. One of them is a bag of rice. Another is a pot. The third is a cord of silk. But the interesting thing is that these are inexhaustible. They're magical. No matter how much rice you take out of the bag, it never ends. No matter how much silk you uncoil, the coil is always as if it's brand new. And these are magical supplies. So he becomes so famous that he's called my Lord Bag of Rice, because he could take as much rice as he could, give it to neighbors and friends that are poor, and he'll always have an inexhaustible supply. So that's the story. Okay, so that's it for the stories. Let me turn my camera around. I guess I have to turn it off.